And listen, you know what you listen to. You kicking off the year off right, with me, Telisa Franklin, on the Telisa Franklin Show right here on FM 104, AM 1240, Wavn the Trend. You know what we're doing over here, right? We're trending the music, the culture, and the conversations. And listen, the conversation of this year is who will be our next mayor? Yes, mayor of the city of Memphis. And let me tell you, this is a big job. And it's going to take some big shoes to fill this job, to continue to move Memphis forward. We deserve this, Memphis. And listen, all week long right here, because you know what we're doing over here. We're trending music, culture, and conversation. The conversation for the culture is who will be our next mayor. Listen, I have a young man in the studio with me this morning. We all love him. We all adore his family name. And he and his family has been a staple in our city. But one thing I know about Paul Young, I'm going to tell you all about him, right? He's going to talk too. I think I'm going to let him talk a little bit. Paul is such a young gentleman with an old soul. So he has a lot of wisdom, right? And so let me go ahead and just dive in it because Paul wants to be the mayor of the city of Memphis. So Paul Young.
Yes.
Man, why you want to be the city mayor? What's up?
It's about purpose for me. My whole life is all about purpose. And I had this inspirational moment when I had just graduated from college at the University of Tennessee. I had this degree in electrical engineering, had moved back to Memphis, and I couldn't find the job that I wanted. And my mom was preaching a sermon over at the Healing Center. Shout out to Pastor Diane Young and the late Bishop William Young. She was preaching this sermon, and in her sermon she said, she was talking about the purpose-driven life. And I don't know if you remember when that book was the craze. And what she said was that God's purpose for your life will never be about you. God's purpose for your life will always be about somebody else. And so I took that and I said, all right, I have this degree, but I'm not necessarily working in the field that I want to be in. So what do I want to do? And I decided at that moment that I wanted to work to rebuild neighborhoods and communities in our city. And so I decided to enroll in city and regional planning at the University of Memphis. So I got a degree in community building. I've been working in neighborhoods and communities for the last 20 years. And I really feel like I've been preparing for this job my whole life. And so it's time for me to step to the plate. It's time for the future of Memphis to step into the shoes. And I represent that future. And I'm ready for the job.
Paul, you know, on this journey, I heard many people say, he's just so young. He's just so young. But, you know, when you brought up, shout out to Pastor Diane Young, your amazing father, Bishop Young. And, you know, I always tell this when I go out and talk to people, I say, listen, Pastor Young said get you a checkup from your nigga, right? And so I know for a fact your mind got to be right because your parents instilled that in you.
Definitely.
But when I hear people say, well, Paul is such a young guy, you know, he may have a little bit more years, maybe give him a little bit more years, he'll really understand this. How do you handle when that's the topic of you're a young guy and not your qualifications?
I would say talk to me. Let's have a discussion, because I say line up all of the candidates and talk to us directly and see who has the clearest vision for the future, who has a track record of results, meaning that in your current or previous jobs, what have you done that demonstrates to us, the public, that you're going to be able to execute on anything that you're saying. And if you demonstrate those results, you shouldn't be our mayor. And regardless of my age, I'm 43, so I'm not that young. I may look a little bit younger, but I've been doing this for 20 years. And so I have a track record of results. And I put my credentials, my credibility up against anybody. And that's, you know, I'm friends with all of the folks that are looking to run, but we're just applying for the same job. And I'm going to go at it with a tenacity that they probably hadn't seen from me, because they hadn't seen that side of Paul. They know me as the respectful, smart person that has led housing, that's now leading downtown development. And, you know, I've worked on affordable housing in our community. I'm ready to tackle all of the problems, because Memphis has been a city with promise. Like, we're almost there for so long. For so long, we always say, Memphis, we almost, all we need is, it's time for us to actually realize that promise. And in order to do that, we need a leader who represents the future of this community, somebody who has learned from the elders. I've been poured into from folks like my parents and Archie Willis and all of the folks that are a little bit older than me, but I'm also still connected to the folks that are in their 20s and 30s. And so represent that middle child, that middle child that's able to put, and I am actually a middle child too, that middle child that actually can push our city forward.
Wow. So we're talking about pushing our city forward in a city that is majority African American, black folk like myself.
Black folk, yep.
With our current mayor came into office, we were about 12% of the people that got the city contracts. How will your administration, because, I'm a black business owner, you know, I have so many businesses, but how will your administration ensure fairness for all?
Well, it's about making sure that that all businesses have an opportunity to compete. You know, the way a lot of business is done is through relationships. And this is how we found ourselves in this conundrum anyway, is if you are a majority firm, you're going to do business with the folks that you connected to, the folks that you know. And so you're going to bring on other majority firms, put things in place to ensure that there are parameters that say you must meet X amount of threshold in terms of minority spending. And so that pushed us higher. You mentioned that when Mayor Strickland came in, they were at 12%. Now I think they're somewhere around 22%. So he's done a lot of work. I was a part of that. I was the director of housing. And so as we were doing that work in the housing and development space, we were pushing our contractors to say, I know you don't necessarily know minority firms, but we'll introduce you to them. We're going to make sure that you have this list. And not only are you going to look at the list, we're going to invite you to different events and activities so you can build relationships. Because once I have a relationship with Telisa, then I want to do business with Telisa because I know her. I can look her in the eyes. That's the way you begin to increase minority spending. That's what I'm doing now at Downtown Memphis Commission. We have a $42 million project where we're building a mobile center, which is a garage with 960 spaces, $42 million project. And we have a 40% minority spending target.
Wow.
40% of it. So that means nearly $20 million is going into black businesses in our community. Those are the types of things that don't come by chance. That happens because you actually are intentional about building those relationships between the businesses that are going to push our city forward. And so that's my target. When I go into office, my goal is to make sure that we don't stop there. Like, we have a goal at Downtown Memphis Commission where 25% of our contracts should go to minority business. And what we tell them is, don't think of that as a ceiling. That's the floor. That's where we start. We start at 25% and we work our way up from there. That's how we're to change our city, a city that's 65% African American, a city where we have tremendous poverty that has been an anchor on our neck for many, many years. What are we going to do about it? That we all are up in arms about crime. I am too. My daughter is 11 years old right now. She's going to be driving in 5 years. Somebody just almost ran me off the road when I was on the way over here. It's craziness. But if we want to change the mentality and change the things that are happening, it has to come from an economic perspective.
So true. Amen, my brother. Amen, y'all, because I'm telling y'all, that's the truth. On Christmas 2022, Memphis, our current water situation, I feel so bad for so many people that's still dealing with it now in 2023. Who's to blame? Is it TVA? Is it MLG&W? What will you do to prevent this from happening?
Yeah, I can't say who's to blame. What I say is the reason that we have the challenge is because of our infrastructure. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to make a choice as a city to say that we're going to invest in the things that keep us safe in the future. We had this problem in February of this year, of 2022, we had the same issue. And what happens is we get past it after a few days. We're all up in arms. You see a lot of posts on Facebook and social media, folks mad. And then, Kanye does something stupid and we forget because we're talking about the next thing. As a city leader, as mayor, my goal is to make sure that we are making investments in the infrastructure that are going to prevent these things in the future. That means we have to make some tough decisions. That means we're going to have to dig into the budget and say that we're going to prioritize this over this. And those are going to be tough, real conversations, but I'm committed to it. When I talk about the 5 pillars of my campaign, one of them is clean and attractive neighborhoods. As a part of building a strong neighborhood, you got to have the infrastructure. I mean, there are people that are literally dying as a result of us not being able to keep the power on.
Yeah.
Like losing their lives. We have to take it that serious that we are not going to lose another life because we're being cheap or because we don't want to make the investment right now. We have to find a way to dig deep and begin making those deep investments in our infrastructure for utilities, in our roads, in transit, like getting people to the job, because it always comes back to the economics of our community. And as mayor, it's my job to make sure that I'm the chief advocate and the person that's actually working to allocate those dollars with our city council.
One thing you said, people lives, they died, y'all, because things was not properly handled. And it's just not to somebody, it's just a life. But to somebody, that was somebody's mama, their daddy, their sister, their brother. Mm-hmm. That was life, y'all. Let's stop just throwing life off. But so even thinking about life, let's think about crime. So many people in our city feel unsafe. Let me be real. Some days I feel unsafe. I'm not going to certain places at this point in my life, right? Because I understand that what I believe in, these other folk don't believe in, right? And so I'm just not going to put myself in harm's way. But you, as the next mayor, what would be your short-term and long-term goal to reduce the crime in our city?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked in that way, because it's important to think about it in those terms, short-term and long-term. Mm-hmm. Because if we're not doing both, then we're not going to solve the problem. And so for me, I always say it's a two-pronged approach. First, it's about suppression. We got to stop the craziness that's going on. The driving that's erratic and, taking people's lives. Like we gotta lock it down. We got to make sure that those people that are doing that are being pulled over. And if you're using your muscle car and wreaking havoc on the street, shutting down the interstate, then we got to take your car. Your car needs to go away. If you are continuing to use this as a weapon of destruction in our community, we got to take it away. If you are, somebody that is doing mischievous behavior, breaking into cars every weekend, we got to bring you to justice. And so that's the suppression side, is we have to make sure that we are firm on violent crime, property crimes that are really decimating our community and our perspective. Long term, and what I say, we have to do these at the same time. At the same time that we're doing the suppression, we got to work on prevention and intervention. We have to identify the reason why. Why are people doing what they're doing? Some of them don't have other opportunities. They don't know of the other opportunities. We know because we work in the business world and we know we can get you over here, but they don't have that in their network. It's not in their universe. How are we bringing that information to people? If you're somebody that's been incarcerated and you try to get a job 2 or 3 times and you walked in the door and they said, well, you got this on your record, so I can't hire you. So now what are they going to do? Because they still got to eat. That's who's going to be kicking in the window. That's who's breaking in the doors. Like, these are the challenge, the root causes. When we talk about crime, what we're seeing is the product of the investments not sown. That's the product, it's the crime. So we got to figure out, how do we invest before an individual decides to take on this life? That's our young people. Because I talked about suppression. I talked about arresting those that are wreaking havoc on our community. I firmly believe my job as mayor is get you off the streets, and hopefully you go into a criminal justice system that will reform you. My job as mayor is get you off the streets. So once we remove them from the streets, if we're not smart and wise, what you've done is created an opportunity. Because now that the shooter is gone, now that the head of breaking in the cars is gone, there's a job opening for this young person that doesn't know another way. And so unless we are able to get to that young person and change the mentality, we will never get out of this cycle. And so my commitment as mayor is to make sure that we're doing both, that we're taking care of the folks that are committing the crime today and preventing the crimes of the future.
You done got, very few times you can get me to be quiet, but you got me that time, because that's dear to me. But many people feel and they understand many of the crime that is happening, that's doing it, it's young people, right? Yeah. And so our our youth feel like they have no outlets for fun. What would be your idea to create something for our young people to give them something, a positive outlook, versus feeling like they're thinking it's fun to go steal a car,
Right.
but they don't understand the consequences of what's going to happen behind it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I have a real life example of that. I mean, when I first became the president of Downtown Memphis Commission in April of 2021, you know, we were coming out of the pandemic. Folks were coming back downtown after having not been there for a while. And one of the biggest challenges we were having were young people that were coming downtown, and they were getting on these scooters and they were darting in and out of traffic 10 or 11 o'clock at night, 15-year-olds. I mean, it was unsafe. It was wreaking havoc downtown. But what I said after we addressed it, and we got the scooters where they were cut off at a certain time, so we addressed it. But what I kept asking everybody that I was talking to is, but what else they got to do? They being 15. They doing what 15-year-olds do. They go have fun on whatever is available to them. And so as mayor, my job is to figure out, how do we extend our touch with our young people? What do I mean by that? From 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock, Memphis and Shelby County Schools has our young people. These same young people leave that school and they come into our city in some space, in some neighborhood, in some community. What can I do as mayor to extend that touch? They've been touched from 7 to 3. How can the city extend that touch? We can open up our parks and our community centers. We can have programs that are programmed by nonprofits. The city doesn't have to do everything. The city can partner with nonprofits that are actually touching our young people for a longer period of time. I would love to see us have another, amusement park like Liberty Land and Adventure River, all these things that I had when I was growing up as opportunities. I mean, that wouldn't be the number one goal as mayor, but that'd be something that I would also research, because I want our young people to have fun. I want our young people to see our city as a place where they want to raise their young people, not where our best and brightest leave and never come back. Because that's what happens is, our best and brightest, they go to college and they go to wherever they go, whether it's University of Tennessee, Pennsylvania, wherever they're at. And they stay in those places and they leave their talent in those cities. And we want to make sure that they feel like Memphis is the place that they want to come back to. And in order to do that, we got to support our young people.
I love it. And young people need this, y'all. So I was about to say mayor. So Paul, y'all.
Speak it. It's all right.
Y'all know I just be talking, right? But it just almost came out. I had to think that thing through because okay. So Paul, I know you represent downtown, and I know you've already feeling that downtown is healthy and successful because you're there, right? You're there on it.
Yeah.
But not only just downtown being healthy and successful, what about the other areas of our city? What would you do to change those areas? Feel that downtown, uptown is healthy?
Yeah. So first, let me say, I don't think downtown is done by any means. Okay. I mean, we still have work to do. I think that it's important that we do both and. I get this question often because people say, well, you represent downtown. What about our other neighborhoods? And what I say about downtown is that downtown is our billboard. This is our regional center. Like if downtown doesn't thrive, South Haven doesn't thrive. Crittenden County doesn't thrive. We must have a strong downtown. We're on the NBA has 18 nationally televised games this year with the Grizz, since we have, one of the best players in the world right now. They're going to be right there in downtown. That's our billboard. When Ford, which just moved 50 miles from downtown Memphis in Stanton, Haywood County, when they were looking, they could have went anywhere in the world, literally. They in downtown Memphis when they made that decision. That's how they shaped their perception on our region. So it's important that we continue to make a strong downtown, but it's also important we make our neighborhood strong. It's important that we find ways to invest in those communities where the people live. And for me, it's all about making investments in the anchors. Now, what do I mean by the anchors? If you think about what a downtown is for a city, for a region, like I just said, it's the center, it's the hub, it's the thing that you see visibly. It's your billboard. In every neighborhood, you have that same principle. If you think about Orange Mound, it's Park Avenue. If you think about Hickory Hill, it's Hickory Hill and Winchester. If you think about Whitehaven, it's Elvis Presley. Every neighborhood has an anchor. And so as a city, what we need to do is make sure that we're putting investments into those anchors, because it changes the perception of the neighborhood. It changes the perception of whether there's growth and prosperity coming to your community. If you drive down Jackson Avenue and you live in Klondike, Smoky City, and every building is blighted and dilapidated, it doesn't make you feel like your neighborhood is on the move. It doesn't make you feel proud. If you're in Orange Mound and you walk past historic Melrose and you see it be vacant for 40 years, it doesn't make you feel proud. But when you make investments like what's getting ready to happen at historic Melrose as a result of the work that I did when I was at Housing and Community Development, where it's now going to be a library with a genealogy center that's focused on African American history to bring people to that neighborhood with senior housing units on the upper floors, that changes your perception. And so our neighborhoods need wins. They need wins. They need care. And they need it to happen in a way where it doesn't break the bank. And so by focusing on the anchors in the community, that's how you get the win. That's how you get private money to come right behind you.
I am impressed that you know about the communities. Let me be real. Because many times we see you as Paul, that downtown guy, right? You're making all these positive strides. But now hearing your heart, you know the hood.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm from Oak Haven. I went to high school at East. And I was the housing director. So I have relationships in all of these communities and still talk to those leaders that have been working hard all their lives to make sure that their neighborhoods are represented with pride and dignity because they feel it, that passion that feel. I went to, I always talk about Orange Mound because I feel like I was one of their adopted sons when I was working on the project, but I went to their homecoming at Melrose and I was blown away. I walked into the cafeteria and there were people from ages 0 to 90, and they were all wearing their gold and maroon shirts, and they were fired up for their community. It brought tears to my eyes to see that pride and to see how the community is now. They deserve it.
Wow. So let's talk about what they deserve.
Yeah.
What's more important for our city right now, building new homes and commercial space, or rehabbing, expanding, or better utilizing our existing homes and storefronts?
What's more important, you need both, of course, but I would say finding ways to rehab, I think is really important. It's costly, but the thing about rehabbing is that it actually maintains character. When you have a city that's all new, when everything in the city is new, it just doesn't, it feels sterile. It doesn't feel like a vibrant cultural scene. And I think Memphis's history is so deep. And I think about it in the context of downtown. One of the things that we would often say, and it's kind of a dig at Nashville because of the competition. We love Nashville. But, what we say is that we have soul. That our change is happening on the inside.
Yeah.
Our change is happening on the inside. So when you see a historic building in downtown Memphis, it actually adds to the nostalgia and the feel of our city. Whereas when you go to somewhere like Nashville, where they're building like crazy, they're new buildings, but they don't give you that same feeling. So we say fewer cranes, more soul.
Wow.
So we have as many cranes, but we have a lot of historic preservation. And I believe that's really important for neighborhoods and communities to maintain that historic fabric.
I think it'll keep a conversation for the younger generation, what was here.
Yeah.
And you never forget that. So
Absolutely.
Let's think about that. One thing that we dealing with is transportation options in our city. We know, and we shout out to MATA for all that they do. What would you do to improve the transportation in our city?
Well, I think it speaks to that whole infrastructure conversation that we started with, which is we got to dream big. We got to dream big and start putting the plans in place, because if we're going to really make a big play for transportation, it's not going to happen in one mayor's terms. It's not going to happen in 8 years, because this has to be a long-term investment. If we're going to build out a light rail system that can get you to and from different parts of this city in a way like D.C. and New York and all those cities that have much greater density, and it makes a lot more financial sense have, we got to be strategic and thoughtful. And so I want to begin putting those long-range plans in place and funding formulas for that. In the meantime, what I think is a I shouldn't say easier, but a more attainable goal in the short term is expanding bus rapid transit, which is what is going to be happening down Union Avenue. And bus rapid transit is not just a bus. It's an electric bus. It looks cool and sleek. The stops have, it's very new age, space age with technology. It can tell you where the bus is. The bus have actually buttons that are built in, so if they're coming up to the light, they can push the button and the light changes automatically. So you're getting to your point, your destination much faster with BRT lines. And I think we need a few major BRT lines. The one that's going to go from down Union, it's going to dogleg over to Poplar, go to the University of Memphis and loop back. That'll hit the center of the city. Now we need some north-souths. We need something going down up Watkins. We need something going down Elvis Presley, all the way down Bellevue to Elvis Presley, to get some of those high trafficked routes. We know that those are some of the routes that are highest trafficked in our community.
Yeah, I love it. So how do you plan? Because one thing I love, what I'm hearing, and I know you that's listening to FM 104 AM 1240 The Trend, the Telisa Franklin Show, that you are impressed with Paul, that he knows his communities. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision making in our city?
Keeping them in, like having direct dialogue and conversation with the community on a regular basis. I think oftentimes people feel like decisions are made in a box, and they just don't know what's happening in the box, and whether the decisions are right or wrong, they have no clue. So they assume it's wrong because they don't know how you made it. And so what my commitment is to the community is to make sure you know how we made the decisions. In my prior job as the housing director and as in my role as the president of Downtown Memphis Committee, highly supportive of what they're doing at Hospitality Hub and some of those other places where I'm not on the board, but I'm a strong supporter.
I love it. Paul, there's so much more, and I'm sorry that we didn't have a whole lot of time to do it today, right? Paul, how can people stay connected to you, learn more about you, reach out to you, and ask you those questions maybe they didn't hear the question that they wanted to hear today? Call you and say, Paul, what is? Or you may have somebody that's doing something in their ministry or in church or in their organization. They say, let me bring this cat over here and let me see what he really gonna say when he in front of the people and not in front of this camera or behind this mic.
I'm glad to do that. They can reach me at Young for Memphis. So on all social media platforms, Young for Memphis. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can go to the website, youngformemphis.com, and reach out. Join the team. Join early. I tell people this is going to be a long race, but we're up for the task. I mean, we're going out with a force. There's nobody that's going to work harder than me for this work, because like I said, I'm doing it for purpose. I'm not running because I want to be governor or president or some other job. I'm running for mayor because this is aligned with my purpose, and I'm the best person for this job. It doesn't mean I'm the best person, period. I'm the best person for this job at this time, and I'm going to make sure that the public knows it.
Thank you for coming on the show. You know, we're going to have more conversations, right?
Absolutely.
This is going to be a ride, y'all, and he's on the train. I'm telling y'all, we're going to have all this good stuff. Listen, y'all, I'm your girl, Telisa Franklin. Y'all just heard from the one, the only, Paul Young. He's a mayoral candidate. 2023. Will it be him? Will I be saying, yeah, Paul? Hey, we don't know, but let me tell you this. If you have somebody that is not registered to vote, listen, get that.